And the complete formula is staggering. It says ask and you will receive. Hey, we ought to look into that. The man says, yes, but you work where I work. By the time you struggle home, it's late. You've got to get a bite to eat, watch a little TV, and get to bed. You can't sit up half the night and ask. And this guy is behind on his bills. He's a good worker, hard worker, sincere, but you've got to do better than work hard and be sincere all of your life. You'll wind up broke and embarrassed. You've got to be better than a good worker. You've got to be a good asker. Let me give you some key points on this asking and receiving, setting goals, asking of life. Here's part of the philosophy that helped me to change. First, asking starts the receiving process. Asking is like pushing a button, and all this machinery starts working, mental and emotional machinery. I don't even know how it works, but I do know it works. There are a lot of things you don't need to know how they work. Just work them. Some people are always studying the roots. Others are picking the fruit. It all depends on what end of it you want in on. So asking is the beginning of receiving. Second, receiving is not the problem. You don't have to work on receiving. It's automatic. So if receiving is not the problem, what is the problem? It's failing to ask. The man says, I see it now. I got up every day this year and hit it hard, but nowhere in my house is there a list of what I want from my life. Can you see? Good worker, poor asker. Third, receiving is like the ocean. There's plenty, especially in this country. It's like an ocean here. Here, success is not in short supply. It isn't rationed so that when you step up to the window, it's all gone. No. Well, if that's true, what is the problem? Well, the problem is some people go to the ocean with a teaspoon. Have you got the picture? A teaspoon. What I suggest you do in view of the size of the ocean is trade your teaspoon for at least a bucket, and you will look better at the ocean with a bucket.
Now here's the last season. It's called the season of harvest. After the long summer that we've been faithful, we've been disciplined, we've nourished our values like a mother, we've fought our enemies like a father, then, as one writer said of ancient script, in due time, your harvest will come. And I want you to have that same opinion. Your day will come. Your harvest is sure. It'll be there for you. Whatever small steps of progress you have to take them. And when you finally walk across a stage like this evening, it will be a thrill beyond imagination. And then you'll be able to say, by gosh, the hard work has paid off. The lonely nights have paid off. Working hard every day has paid off. And my harvest has finally come. Now, a couple of things I want you to think about now in the harvest time. Here it is. Accept your personal harvest with full responsibility. No need to complain because it's your crop. So whatever your harvest is, you've got to say, that's my harvest. Don't complain. Take responsibility. Now here's the next one. Don't apologize. I want you to go home prouder than you've ever been before. And here's what I want you to say when you get home. I deserve the honor. I got it, but I deserved it. They don't pass out diamonds for non-work. We don't pass out diamonds for those that are just related to us. We don't pass out these extraordinary rewards and give honor to those who don't do the job. Those who do the work get the pay, and those that do the work get the honors. And I'm proud of all of you here today.
So in the mid-1980s, a theologian named James Carsey wrote this little book called Finite and Infinite Games, in which he defines these two kinds of games. Finite games, which have known players, fixed rules, and agreed upon objectives. Football, right? There's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the objective is to win the game. And then there's infinite games, Infinite games are defined as known and unknown players. You don't necessarily know who all the other players are. The rules are changeable. You can play however you want. And the objective is to perpetuate the game, to stay in the game as long as possible. What I find so fascinating about this idea when I first learned about it is we are players in multiple infinite games every day of our lives. There's no such thing as being the winner in your marriage, you know. There's no such thing as winning global politics, and there's definitely no such thing as winning business. Business is an infinite game. And yet, when we listen to the language of too many leaders, they talk about being number one, being the best, and beating their competition. Based on what? There's no agreed upon objectives, there's no agreed upon timeframes. And so what ends up happening is you have people building organizations and leading with a finite mindset, playing to win, in a game where there's no such thing as winning. And when we play with a finite mindset in an infinite game, there's a few very predictable and consistent outcomes, amongst which include the decline of trust, the decline of cooperation, the decline of innovation, all of which contribute to the eventual demise of the organization itself. And so what I wrote about is what it means to lead with an infinite mindset, because we teach leadership as if it were a finite game. You know, people start business with the goal of winning or being number one, and that's a problem because that's impossible. So what I wrote about in the infinite game is leading with an infinite mindset.
So talk to me about why revenue is a mistake, because as a business leader, when you walk in, that actually seems like an agreed upon metric, certainly if you're playing to Wall Street, understanding your price per share, like what that means, the value that you're adding to shareholders. Like, I think most people at that level of business would say, what do you mean? We all know what the scoreboard is.
There's nothing wrong with revenues. There are two currencies in the infinite game, will and resources. Resources is money. You need money to stay in the game, but you need the will of the people as well. And the problem is that when we organize to win, that means the score is more important than the inspiration and motivation that people have to give their blood, sweat, and tears. And when we prioritize resources before will, that's a problem. I've never met a CEO that doesn't believe their people are important. The problem is where on the priority list. You know, been to any number of presentations where they put their priorities on the wall, you know, number one, growth, number two, shareholder value, number three, our customer, number four, our employees. There it is. See, I do care about our people. And the reality is, as social animals, we want to work for and we're willing to give our blood, sweat, and tears to leaders who understand that the balance of those two essential currencies, the balance of those two things is will has to come before resources. And that doesn't mean 90-10. When I talk about putting people before profit, you know, people freak out, which is ridiculous. You need fuel for the car to go. Money is fuel for the organization, of course. Even if there's a leaning, it's 51-49. There has to be a slight leaning towards people, because there will always be decisions that a company has to make in which those two cannot both be supplied and one will have to be sacrificed. The question is, which will you always prioritize? Let me give you a hypothetical example to make my point. Two CEOs. The first CEO says, our number one priority is growth. And of course our people are important, because if we take care of our people, we will meet and exceed our financial goals. Second CEO says, our number one priority is our people. And if we take care of our people, we will always meet and exceed our financial goals. Which one would you rather work for? I mean, it's obvious, right? It's obvious. So this is what it means to prioritize will over resources. It has, of course, money matters, but the people matter more.
You've got to start creating meaningful moments in your life. What do I mean by that? Well, listen, you and I both know, I mean, how many times do you get caught up in the day? You get caught up in the news, you get caught up in your swiping and looking and consuming. You get caught up in your to-do list, you get caught up in all the emails, you get caught up in all the work. And all of a sudden the whole day went by and you didn't feel it. And I'm here to tell you something that really remarkable that I've learned this last year. Last year was my first year where as a high performance coach, I was coaching 2 billionaires. And I'd never done that before. I mean, many of you guys know, and you've been with me on my journey, for 2 decades I've been in personal development. And in this last decade, it's kind of where I made my mark. I published 6 books. We grew our audience to, whatever, 5 million on Facebook and, 800,000 or whatever it is on Instagram now, 800,000 on YouTube, best-selling books, traveling. You've seen us fill the rooms and all the events that I do. But this last year was like a whole other level for me. It was so hard, so challenging. We moved, Denise and I. And I also started taking on these caliber of clients. I mean, holy cow, I didn't know if I could handle it. I mean, I'm not a billionaire. I got no problem telling anybody that. I'm not out there trying to pretend pretend. You can't fake it with billionaires, they know. And so when I was coaching them, I kind of struggled for a while to figure out what they were unhappy about. I hope that doesn't sound flippant, but I was like, wow, they got so much going for, what's up? Why aren't you happier? If you have everything, right? Like the material things most people are seeking, why aren't you happier? And I'll ask you guys that same thing. Why do you feel like you're not happier? Like, what's going on? I mean, most people, consumer watching this, I mean, you're doing okay. I mean, you might be unhappy here and there. You might struggle with, like, especially, I mean, a tremendous amount of our audience in personal development is strivers, they're achievers, they're working hard, they're often the leaders in their community, and everybody goes, wow, I mean, they're already impressed with you. They're already happy that you're chasing your dream. They're already like, kind of, like you're living life on your own terms a little bit. And so are these major people I was coaching. I couldn't figure out what's going on with them. And then I tripped on, maybe, was it last year, I think it was the end of the prior year. I got it. Here they were doing amazing things, guys, every single day. They were living the dream. They had finances. They had impact. People were impressed with them. They, had love often in their life. They were married or had good kids or whatever, but they still weren't happy and they still did not feel connected. And here is what I discovered. They did not feel the day. Let me say it again. They didn't feel the day. They went through the day, some of them very high achieving through the day, accomplishing things on their purpose, making a difference, a role model, earning, doing the whole thing. And yet when they laid their head on the pillow at night, they hadn't felt the day. Think about that for a moment. Think about how many days you go to bed and you didn't really feel the moments of the day. And this is why too many days unfelt leads to a disconnect with purpose. Too many days unfelt leads to a disconnect with purpose. Does that make sense? And so what do we have to do? We have to create the habits, the routines, the patterns where we learn to create and feel meaningful moments. I talk about this in my book, The Motivation Manifesto, or you guys hear me talk about it on The Brendan Show a lot, my podcast, where you have to take these moments in time and do what I call slow time. It's like, yes, you're gonna kiss your honey on the way out the door to work. But you know what? When you plant that kiss, baby. Make it a moment. Feel that moment, When you hug the kids and they're running off to school, really give a real hug. Don't say ya and move on to the next thing. We're always moving on to the next thing and not feeling this moment. We're not present in the moment because we're not thinking about, let me create something meaningful here. Let me feel something here. Because we're absent of presence and the sense of meaning in the moment, we are disconnected from purpose.